In our last video, we laid the foundations of Pompoir biomechanics to explain how women can learn how to control their pelvic floor muscles to milk, squeeze, pulse, lock, and twist a partner during sex, as well as perform dozens of other moves just using their vaginas. Check out that video first to understand how the art of Pompoir is even possible, so you can approach your training in a holistic way if you want to become a vaginal goddess. In this video, we're going to go even further on muscle anatomy and muscle abilities, and we're going to teach you step by step how to design an optimal Pompoir training program. You've entered Gripology 102. If you recall, in our last video we told you that vaginal biomechanics are heavily under-researched, and this is despite the fact that the little research we do have shows a strong correlation between pelvic floor training and an increase in libido and pleasure for women. This is why, following the trend from our Gripology 101 video, we're going to be referring to the research performed in another set of muscles in order to understand and design an optimal vaginal training program. Again, we'll be referring to...
Because you know I'm all about that bass, no trouble.
Back bottom girls, you make the rock and world go round. Let me see that song.
The glute muscles. As we mentioned in part 1, today we'll be covering the 3 mechanisms of building a muscle and how they relate to mastering these amazing vaginal skills, different muscle abilities such as endurance, strength, power, speed, and mobility, and how to master each for the different types of sex you'll be having, and finally, how to design an optimal Pompoir training program, taking everything we learned into account. As always, remember we're not doctors and this should not be taken as medical advice. And all the papers we'll be referencing will be linked below so that you can do your own research. The 3 mechanisms of hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is, simply put, muscle growth through exercise. When we train a muscle through progressive overload, such as doing more donkey kicks, lifting heavier dumbbells, or holding a plank for longer, we're damaging our muscle fibers, so that when they repair, they can become stronger and bigger in size. This is true for your vagina as well. If you want to be able to suck the tip of a penis as if performing a vaginal blowjob, if you want to rub your partner up and down with your lateral walls, or if you want to twist him inside of you in the midst of passion, you're going to need strong pelvic floor muscles. And how do you make your levator ani, the main pelvic floor muscle, stronger? According to Brad J. Schonfield, PhD, professor and fitness author, there are 3 main mechanisms involved in muscle building. These are mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. Mechanical tension occurs when you place a muscle under tension through its full range of motion. Say that you perform a barbell squat. You're placing your glutes under tension as you lower the barbell all the way down, but also as you push through your heels to stand back up. For the vagina, because we're not going to be lifting weights, we have other ways of placing the muscle under tension. For example, when performing a long contraction, we're spending more time in the position where the vagina is at peak tension. In this case, when it's fully contracted. The same is true for movements like the full squeeze. As you move up the vertical levels of the vaginal canal to squeeze each region, you're lengthening the time under tension of your muscles, before you then release the squeeze. It's important to note here that because our goal is not necessarily to make our vaginal muscles bigger, tampering with loads and adding external resistance is not necessary to accomplish any of our Pompoir skills. Our goal here is strength, not size, so don't go buying no 10-pound dumbbells to lift with your vagina.
Do you even lift?
Metabolic stress is related to that burning sensation you get when you're really targeting a muscle. Forget the barbell and imagine that your body pump class teacher put a band around your knees and is asking you to do 30 squat bounces, no rest. How would your muscles feel after the 3rd set of that? Your buns would probably be on fire, right? And you'd probably leave the class feeling like you've got the booty of a Cadillac.
Oh my God, Becky, look at her butt.
That pump and that burn are 2 of the mechanisms involved in metabolic stress. And they occur because metabolite is accumulated in the muscle cells as we perform high-set exercises with low rest periods. Back to the vagina, this is the case for high-rep exercises like pulses, sucks, and butterfly flutters. Finally, muscle damage is roughly related to DOMS or delayed onset muscle soreness. If you've ever tried a new exercise for the first time or went back to an exercise after a prolonged break, you're well familiar with this feeling. We can also induce muscle soreness by focusing on a negative portion of an exercise. We touched this on part 1 of this video when we spoke about eccentric and concentric contractions. The eccentric portion of a movement is when the muscle lengthens. In our squat example, you can induce DOMS by slowing down on the lowering part of the lift when you're squatting down. This applies to the vagina as well, in movements like eccentric contractions and the milking technique. But you don't want to go overboard with focusing on eccentric contractions, as being sore the next day will not be optimal if you want to train again. A more effective way of eliciting muscle damage is to add variety to your training, to ensure the targeting of different subdivisions and motor units of muscles. Muscle abilities. Amongst the fitness community, there are different theories about which are the key abilities that constitute a well-rounded athlete. Is body composition important? Is it balance? Maybe it's reaction time? For our gripology class purposes, we're going to focus on 5 main components of pelvic floor fitness, which are also the ones considered by doctors when performing the perfect test in the assessment of healthy pelvic floor muscles. These are strength, mobility or flexibility, endurance, speed, and power. Strength is fairly straightforward. It measures the ability of a muscle to exert maximal force in one contraction. You know your glutes have gotten stronger if you can do a step up with heavier dumbbells than you could last month. In the case of the vagina, your best indicator of strength is going to be your partner, as well as your own sensations during sex. You know your muscles have gotten stronger if your partner can feel you squeezing more tightly than you could last month. And more importantly, you'll know you're getting stronger because penetration is going to become more intense and pleasurable for you. There's a limit to this though. You don't want to become overly tense, and some women who already hold a lot of tension on their pelvic floors shouldn't even train Pompoir in the first place until they learn to relax their muscles. That's why you should always get a pelvic floor assessment before starting your vaginal goddess journey. This is also why we place a lot of importance in not only training our pelvic floor to be strong, but flexible. Flexibility is the ability to move your muscles and joints through their full range of motion without pain or stiffness. If you can do a yogi squat, for example, it means you have good hip mobility and that your glutes are fairly flexible. This in turn helps you move better through other exercises and therefore helps you build more muscle while preventing injury. When doing Pompoir training, we place a lot of focus on moving throughout the vagina's full range of motion, and we even stretch our pelvic floor muscles at the end of each practice. This is crucial, especially while learning new moves. You want to be mindful of fully relaxing your muscles when you finish squeezing, pulsing, or contracting. And you want to stretch and relieve any tension after a workout session. Though research on stretching is still quite controversial, evidence does show that maintaining good flexibility aids in prevention of injury and can significantly increase muscle mass when performed after exercising. If there's something you don't want if you're looking for better sex, it's an injured vagina. So always remember to relax your pelvic floor and stretch after your Pompoir practice. Now, after you have a solid foundation of strength which allows you to get a grasp of all these Pompoir moves, and you're focused on moving through your muscles' full range of motion, it's time to move on to endurance training. Muscular endurance is the ability of your muscles to continue to contract multiple times without significant tiring. Think back to that awful body pump teacher who is now asking you to hold a squat for 30 seconds. For students of our course, you're probably reminded of the long contraction. And while yes, this isometric hold is definitely an endurance challenge, so is doing 50 repetitions of a move without rest. You can probably imagine why this is important in the bedroom. Unless sex for you lasts only a couple of minutes, which, be warned, might be the case when you first try a couple of these incredible exercises on your partner, you want to be able to sustain these moves for a prolonged period of time. So after you learn how to twist, for example, you'll start practicing how to do it multiple times in a row. And once you're able to do it multiple times in a row, you're gonna start training how to do it in a way that matches the speed of the sex that you're having. Speed is a measure of an individual's ability to move quickly across a set distance, or to move a limb rapidly through a range of motion. Just like your glutes contract and stretch fast when you're sprinting, your pelvic floor experiences a series of fast, involuntary contractions as you reach orgasm. But what about the voluntary moves we refer to when we're doing Pompoir? Some of the most pleasurable techniques involve a fast tempo, such as fluttering to stimulate the penis from top to bottom, or even a change in rhythms, such as when you combine quick, hot pulses with the slow, sultry whip motion. So once you can do an exercise a few times without getting tired, you'll move on to doing it fast, slow, and combining it with other exercises to match the tempo of your lovemaking, or even develop your own Pompoir rhythm. But this is not the last ability you'll master. Now it's time you dial in the amount of power you want for each move. Power refers to a great force production over a short period of time. In the case of the glutes, think of explosive box jumps. You're generating a lot of force fast through your legs to jump on top of the box. In the case of the vagina, mastering power is generally the last step to feel like you're fully fluent in a specific Pompoir move.
Peter, you can't speak Italian just because you have a mustache.
Being powerful means that you can not only do a move several times in a row and with varying speeds, but also in a way that stimulates your most pleasurable regions intensely. Let's take the example of the sought-after, ever-elusive twisting technique. This is how you would go about learning it using our Pompoir progression schema. First, you would have to possess a decent level of strength in your pelvic floor muscles in order to even understand how to move them to achieve this exercise. Twisting involves mastery of the frontal plane and the sagittal plane of the vagina, and it's a movement of rotation, so it happens along the axial plane of the vagina. Remember, we covered these 3 anatomical planes in our Gripology 101 class. As far as this move goes, your strength should be top-notch in all regions of your pelvic floor in order to execute it properly. Once you've understood the sequence of steps required to perform it, you will focus on doing it using proper form. You would slowly pulse the front and push with one side, while simultaneously pulling in with the other. Then you would slowly release the entire movement to follow the entire range of motion. And you would practice twisting to each side as to avoid creating any muscle imbalance. Like always in our training, you would stretch after each workout to improve your flexibility and avoid injury. As you progress and are able to perform twisting to either side at a moment's notice, you would practice doing more and more repetitions of the move until it becomes second nature. This is probably the time when you're ready to start performing it in the bedroom and try it in your favorite positions. And as you get a deeper understanding, pun intended, of the positions where this technique feels the most pleasurable, you're gonna want to be able to gain some endurance with this move to be able to perform it for longer without getting tired. This is where you can incorporate more volume in your day-to-day training and scheduling more repetitions of your favorite moves. And this will naturally be followed by a practice based on speed. The more you try this move in sex, the more positions you will discover that you can enjoy it on, and the more you'll want to adapt it to different rhythms and speeds. You'll learn how to do it fast for when sex becomes passionate, quick, and animalistic. And you'll learn how to do it slowly for a more intimate, sensual, and romantic encounter. Finally, as you continue practicing during the week and showing off during the weekend, this is when, with every passing workout session, you'll optimize the move and truly make it your own by dialing in the intensity. Do you want to press harder with your front wall because that's where it feels better? Do you want to pull more intensely to one side because it rubs your G-spot the right way? Do you prefer going slow at the beginning and then turning the power up to 11 when you're both about to reach climax?
These go to 11.
It's when you've mastered these 5 main fitness abilities for a specific Pompoir move that you'll truly feel like it's part of your arsenal. Like you can use it whenever you want at the intensity and speed that you most desire for as long as you wish, all while maintaining proper form. How to design a Pompoir training program. Okay, it's time for the fun part of this video, putting everything we learned into practice. Again, I want to remind you that before you start Pompoir, or any form of pelvic floor training for that matter, you want to consult with your physician to make sure that you're eligible to do these types of workouts. If you have a hypertonic pelvic floor, you're not going to want to proceed with this. Now, assuming that you've got the green light from your doctor, let's develop your training schedule. The first thing you want to do is set a time and a place to do Pompoir. Ideally, you'll want to train Monday through Friday for 20 minutes. But if you're just starting out, you can get away with training 3 times a week. You're going to want to create a space for training where you're not going to be interrupted. Ideally, this happens in a quiet room where you can sit over a mat on the floor. But I've even had students create the space for training in their car while they're waiting for their kids to finish school. As long as you're calm, comfortable, and can adopt at least 2 different positions that emulate the positions you adopt during sex, you can make this work. The most important thing here is to keep at it week by week. So don't waste time overthinking how to create the perfect space for Pompoir or how many minutes a day is enough for training. Discipline with your workouts is much more important than perfectionism here. The second step is to ensure you're following all the guidelines for a healthy practice. We have a pelvic floor health guide on our blog packed with tips from professionals on proper breathing, posture, rest periods, and stretching that you can print out if you need a reminder. Like we said, we want to train for at least 20 minutes, 5 of which will be solely dedicated to stretching and relaxing your pelvic floor after your practice. Now, let's move on to exercise selection. This chart shows you the different Pompoir abilities ranked by level of difficulty. If you're a complete beginner, different types of contractions are going to be your starting point. The great thing about this is that these beginner exercises are also the most straightforward way to gain a foundation of strength in your pelvic floor muscles. And this baseline of strength is necessary to progress to more complex moves. If you want a step-by-step tutorial on these exercises, download our free beginner's guide at goddess.com/free guide. Now, as you move down this chart and advance through the more complex abilities, you'll want to follow our Pompoir progression schema every time you want to learn a new move. Step 1 is choosing the move you want to master and making sure that you've got the strength to execute it. You'll know you're ready for it when you've already been able to perform the moves that are above this one in the Pompoir abilities chart. So, if you want to master sucking, for example, you should already be able to perform all types of contractions. And you can start learning milking and fluttering at the same time as you learn this move. Step number 2 is getting started practicing the exercise with proper form, matching the moves with your breathing, and stretching your pelvic floor when you finish your training. Step number 3 is gaining enough endurance with this exercise that you feel comfortable taking it to the bedroom. This means that you should be able to perform it a few times in a row without fatiguing, and ideally in several positions that you expect to adopt during sex. Step number 4 is going to be the fun experimentation stage. This is when you bring the exercise into the bedroom and you start learning which positions, tempos, and levels of intensity you enjoy the most for this move. Does it feel better when you're on top, slowly grinding on your man? Or does it feel better when you're on all fours and things have gotten rough and intense? And finally, step number 5 is optimization of the move. This is when you'll take all the information you've gathered in step number 4 to make the move truly yours. If you want to use it during faster sex sessions, you'll start practicing faster repetitions of the exercise. If you loved a particular position for it, you'll start training it in that position. If you'd like to perform it in a more powerful way, you'll practice stronger, explosive repetitions of it by recruiting your type 2B muscle fibers. Okay, believe it or not, there's still a lot more to cover in the world of Pompoir. Girth training, using tools, strength plateaus, the list goes on. Training these muscles is not that different from training any other sets of muscles, and the world of fitness keeps growing by the minute. Nonetheless, I hope you found this video useful to get started on developing these skills, and as always, if you want to fast-track your way to becoming a vaginal goddess, you can master all of these skills in our step-by-step course on Pompoir at goddess.com. Make sure you like and subscribe to this channel, because we're going to continue to release plenty of videos to help you along your Pompoir journey. For now, goodbye and good luck.